Rev up your engines!
Ford is recalling some more 30,000 Mustangs because they might start turning the steering wheel by themselves. I'm not making this stuff up. This is real. And what do they say? A steering wheel that turns unintentionally by itself can cause a loss of vehicle control and increase the risk of a crash. No fooling, Jack. The problem is, all this electronic crap, and these have electronic power steering, can go haywire. And here's what Ford says. The problem is improper calibration of the secondary digital torque sensor in the steering gear that they can fix through a software update. How could they not have fail-safe software so that you're driving down the road and all of a sudden it starts driving itself? To me, that is just poor design, poor engineering. There should be no way in Hades that you're going down the road and all of a sudden the car starts turning a wheel by itself because it feels like it's going to. This stuff is not ready for prime time. I wish they'd stop selling it to people, creating problems, and then saying, oh, well, it's just a software glitch. We'll write a... How many software glitches do these things have, you know? They shouldn't be allowed to sell these things to the public until they have them up and running and they're safe for everything. It's one thing if your phone or your laptop computer crashes, you don't get hurt, right? But when your car crashes, that's an actual crash, and it's goodbye. So I think they should basically just stop selling these things to people until they get them perfected. And they obviously do not have them perfected yet. Sports God 05 says, Scotty, what's your opinion on a 2024 GMC 2500 6.6 gas? Thanks. I am not a fan of modern GM cars and engineering. They've been going downhill for a while. But at least that is a GMC 2500. I've been telling people for years, do not buy a Silverado 1500 GM pickup truck. The quality of them is garbage. And I know a lot of commercial guys that will say the same thing. But these same commercial guys, quite a few of them are driving GMC 2500s. The quality seems to be quite a bit better in their commercial grade stuff because they kind of realize, hey, if we're selling these big expensive trucks, they better not fall apart. Now, they're not cheap. I know a guy runs an AC company in Tennessee. He got a GMC 2500. He paid 120 grand for that thing. He got it loaded with a back and everything because he runs a company doing AC and heating and he'll do a whole subdivision, stuff like that. But they're expensive. They're expensive, but they're much better than the GM 1500s. Bill Nellis says, Scotty, they stole my catalytic converter in my 2000 Jeep. I have a long pipe directly in my offer with no catalytic converter. Is it okay to drive my Jeep like that? Well, you're breaking the law, breaking the law, right? It's against the law to drive a car in the United States without a catalytic converter if it came with one originally. That's the law. But on the other hand, if you live in an area like I do when I'm in Tennessee, there are no inspections whatsoever for cars. And if nobody inspects it, you can drive your car that way. They actually run better. The catalytic converter serves one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to stop unburned hydrocarbons from polluting the atmosphere. That's all they do. If you take them off, they actually run better. Now, you check engine light and stuff will probably come on because it knows that there's no cat because the oxygen sensors aren't there anymore and it's not getting data that's supposed to get and stuff, but it will actually run better. But it is against the law. And if you live in a place where they do inspections, emissions inspections, you're not going to pass. Kevin Korchak said, Scotty, what's your honest opinion on Aston Martin vehicles? I was interested in getting an 08 2020 sports car. Just wondering. Okay, those are rich men's toys. I know people who own them, and they were very rich people, and they didn't care how much money it cost and how much money it cost to maintain them. For your own curiosity, find out what a tune-up and an oil change costs for those things. It's thousands of dollars, right? And the parts are outrageously expensive. They don't stock much at the dealers. And they're just super, super expensive cars. But it's a snob thing. Hey, if you got all kinds of money, you want to be driving an Aston Martin. When you're going to Palm Beach, Rhode Island, you're going to Newport for a jazz festival or something. You want to impress people, go ahead and spend all that money. I'd rather buy a house than a car. Sharon Keith says, Scotty, my 18 Pilot has a weird tranny issue. The warning pops up when I'm driving 65 to 70, more than 3 or 4 miles. The fix is to turn it up and back on. No code, transmission shifts perfectly. Okay, if you have a code like that transmission and you turn it off and then turn it on again, especially in a Honda. It means you have a problem with the transmission control module, the TCM, because when you do turn it off and then start it back on, it resets the TCM, and I've seen Hondas do that many times over the years. Now, unfortunately, yours is an 18, and I believe on that vehicle that the transmission control module is part of the main powertrain control module, so you got to replace the whole expensive thing and get it reprogrammed. Check with your VIN number and see if that's the case. And back in the old days, they had a PCM. I also had a TCM on Hondas. You could just buy the TCM, and it was only a couple $100. But I think they've integrated into the ECM now. Philip says, Scotty, is my first car. I want to get a car that's not too powerful, expensive, and in my country, the Opel brand is common. I hear that the Astra G is really reliable. What's your opinion? Well, you can join me. My first car was an Opel, believe it or not. Buick used to import them in the United States because Opel was owned by GM in those days. That was the first car I had. I paid $550 for that car, and I drove the heck out of it. I drove it all over the place. Then I sold it for $500 when I got rid of it. So they're decent, cheaper cars. You know, not in the States, of course. No, you can't get parts for them. They don't sell them. But you're obviously in another country, and it could be a decent car. I know people in England who have them. They love them. They said they get parts for them. There's mechanics that can work on them. Silky RL says, Scotty, I just bought a 98 Honda Civic EX. Once I got home, the speedometer won't move. What can I do to fix it? Okay, speedometers run by the speed sensor. So I would say just go and buy a new speed sensor, put it on, go to any auto parts store. They can sell you the thing, they can show you where it bolts on, put it on, and pray that's it. Now, if that's not it, your cell phone, you put on Google Maps, it'll give the speedometer. You could just put a little stand on your car and use your cell phone as a speedometer. Hey, you can do that these days. Couldn't do that when I was young. You would just be guessing, right? I mean, when I do it, I always had cars with tachometers. So I'd learn which gear, at which RPM was how much speed, so I could drive by the tachometer. I just have to know what gear I'm in, and I know how fast I'm going. But now you can even use your phone for that. Starley says, Scotty, how do you know if the motor has forged internals? The car dealer I bought said my 2011 Subaru WRX STI has forged internals, but I didn't get any documentation. Give you an analogy. Over the years, I had many people buy used cars, and guys will say, oh yeah, the guy told me the engine was all rebuilt with forged parts. And I'd say, one, I'd want receipts for it, right? Then I'd want to talk to the mechanic who did the work too, because so many people say something has something, and since it's inside the engine, there's no way you can see it. Unless you have Superman come and X-ray vision. Yes, look, I can the serial numbers. Those are forged internals. You would never know. You just have to follow the paper route trail on that. Mr. Me says, are you supposed to replace the torque converter with the replacement transmission, even if it's not bad, similar to replacing a clutch, if it's a manual transmission that's being replaced? All right. Well, if you want to be safe, it's a good idea, because people are often guessing when they rebuild automatic transmissions. Is it the torque converter? Is it the transmission? Is it a combination? Who knows, right? So if you go through all the trouble of either rebuilding or putting a remanufactured transmission in a car, you may as well put a new torque converter in it. What if your torque converter is 90% worn and you're spending $3 to $5 grand for a new tranny? Put it on that torque converter, and then 6 months or a year later, the torque converter goes out, and then the car slips and won't drive anywhere. It would only make sense to do it because, hey, you're gambling. Anytime you got to work on either the tranny or the torque converter, you got to pull the transmission off, and it's a big deal. Costs you a lot of money. Khalid says, Scotty, I love your program. I got an 06 Honda Accord with 80,000 miles. Check engine lights on. Downloaded OBD oxygen sensor issue. Is it serious? Thanks. All right. Well, if it's running fine, it's not serious. It's that simple. Oxygen sensor systems monitor how much oxygen is in the exhaust so it can make the perfect air-fuel ratio for your engine so it runs right. Now, a lot of times, they will get oxygen sensor codes because the electric heater in them isn't working anymore. They came up with this BS pollution control thing that when you start up your car, the oxygen sensors take too many minutes to heat up and you're polluting those 2 minutes, right? So then they put heater, like in a hairdryer, to heat up oxygen sensor fast so that it reacts quickly. They only work good when they're at a high temperature. If that heating element shorts out, it'll trip a code. And then once your car warmed up, which only takes a couple minutes, it'll run perfectly normal. So if that's the case, The only hassle is if you live in a state that does emissions testing. It'll fail when it's time to get your emissions tested to get your registration for the year. Then you would have to fix the stupid thing. Affliction says, why do I have these warning lights? I got a 06 BMW 330xi that shows red brake light, yellow ABS light. On the main screen shows 4x4 ABS. I tried to look it up and I get all kinds of opinions. What should I do? I wouldn't have bought that car in the first place. Those BMW XI series are some of the biggest money pits on earth. You got to get a guy like me, hook up a fancy scan tool and analyze them. Sometimes one thing will trip all those codes, but they have to be analyzed with somebody like me who knows what they're doing with a computer that gives them all the data. If you have an ABS problem in that BMW, a lot of times it will trip also the brake light. We hook up the machine. First thing we do is we write down the codes, then we erase them all. Then we take it for a short road trip and we see which ones come back first, because the one that comes back first is the main problem and it may end up tripping all the others. So let's see, the first thing comes up is ABS. It says it's got a bad sensor on the right front. Well, then you would replace the right front sensor, reset it, and road test it. There may still be other problems, but you fixed the one that came up first and that may have tripped all those other ones. That's how you go about fixing them the correct way. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.